So the title of this section is called Balancing the Mind on Spiritual Wisdom. And it's called that because the final mental quality that we develop in practicing Jnana Yoga is called samadhana. Samadhana, frequently, if you look it up, a one-to-one, it would be focus. So it would be a direct translation would be focus. But more thoroughly, it means balancing attention or transitioning the act of attention fluidly. Or very simply, I like to call it fluid focus. Now, a fluid focus is significantly different than a focus that you may have encountered in the 8 limbs. Dharana is focus of the 8 limbs, but in that context, focus means immovable concentration of the mind. So it is a focal point. It's finding a very deep and unshakable focus. Contrasting that with fluid focus, when you develop a fluid focus, I believe that you're able to achieve spiritual wisdom deeply and authentically. So far, this section has been a process of inner exploration and therefore understanding your mind on a deeper level. A fundamental part of that process is to be able to evaluate these different virtues and your values, your personal values, and as they relate to your life, and really it's as they relate to humanity as a whole. This inner exploration, this process, is about comparing concepts, and it's about deep contemplation. Contemplation is a key component of Jnana Yoga. And most importantly, it is about integrating a lot of these contemplation concepts into your life with a lot of care. Through this type of work, I think that we find a much deeper connection with what spirituality really is. You gain a better understanding of who you are and therefore who you're not. And we get to understand what that really means. This type of personal development is the groundwork that we must lay for a truly spiritual life. It is cognitive wisdom setting the stage for true spiritual wisdom. So in other words, the practices of contemplation, they bring you closer to your essence, your deep down who you truly are. And if you're comfortable in saying it, it brings you closer to God. Contemplation is a process of challenging all of your assumptions of the world, right? As well as whatever your default mental patterns are, those samskaras that are mentioned in this section. Once you are able to acknowledge your default processes, you can reevaluate them. You can reshape them in ways that are more appropriately. You can literally take old patterns and replace them with new ones. In doing this, you can experience life in a way that's unfiltered. It's genuine and it's beautiful just the way it's made, without your interpretation or your perspective just changing it or manipulating it in any way. Now, to transition from cognitive wisdom to spiritual wisdom, I'd like to take a look at what spirituality really is. Universally, spirituality must mean something simple. It can't be a complex idea. I like to think that it just means that you resolve to consume less while finding ways to contribute more to the world around you. You're finding ways to improve the state of creation, right? Or at least preserve it, at least keep it status quo. And stop it from bleeding, so to speak. Spirituality is really about creating a safer, more inclusive, and sustainable world for the future, for generations to come. So when you think about spirituality, don't be quick to look to the afterlife. Living a spiritual life is not about that. Living a spiritual life is about seeing the connection that we have with everything in the universe, past, present, and future. Now, from that, once we're able to really see our own connection with all things, You'll be compelled to care for it, as well as care for the people surrounding you. Ultimately, as we become more connected with our spiritual purpose, we help others on their own path, in their own way. After all, what good is all this mental work and development to see this truth, to unblock ourselves and see truth, if we're not going to share it with other people? We can't hoard that kind of information. Once you grow internally, and I think this is true of all things, once we all grow internally, we get to a point where you can use that new strength and that new perspective for good, or we could use it for evil. We could use it for others or for selfish reasons. A lot of times people gain knowledge and they use that to manipulate other people or outwit them. And they do that so that they can further position themselves away from them, or at least be perceived as like above them, right? Conversely, as you gain more knowledge and more connections with others, we have to use it from a stance of compassion and goodwill in order to unite us and facilitate growth within all things and all people. We have to take our position of privilege and transform it into a responsibility. Now, bringing theology into the definition of spirituality, the universal connection among all things and people that we have, that's the divine spirit, that's God. And that's the God within you, within me, within everyone, and truly everything. And therefore, we should stop and kind of take a look at the definition of spirituality, or spiritual wisdom, I should say. So when you look at the definition of cognitive wisdom means taking appropriate action and making right decisions when you apply the experiences that you've been through and the knowledge that you've gained, as well as using good judgment. That's loosely what's written in this section. I believe that spiritual wisdom should grow from that. It must grow from that. So knowing the definition of cognitive wisdom, I think that we can now define what spiritual wisdom really is. And I think that it's being sound in your actions and decisions when you apply your spiritual experiences, your knowledge of the divine within you, and being able to use your judgment to see the divine within all things.